1 second. But for all of you who have your Bibles, please turn with me to James, the second chapter, verse 14 through 26. James, the second chapter, verse 14 through 26. One of the things that we've been doing, as I've been giving some of the Bible studies and, part of the series that I've been working on is been talking about James and how he's been relating to the people and trying to really, get deep with, our faith and how important faith is. When we read in the second chapter, these verses 14 through 26, one of the things we're going to see is we're going to see how important it is to have not only faith, but what does it mean to have faith and works? Is it even a need to have that? And what does it truly mean to, what is the true meaning of faith? And do I have to really put any type of actions or works to what I'm doing when I said that I have faith in God? So when I read this and as we go through this, let's see what the word is telling us as we go through this. I'm reading from the NIV version, and it reads as follows. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or a sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you said to them, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. But someone will say, you have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by my deeds. You believe that there is one God. Good. Even the demons believe that and shudder. You foolish person. Do you want evidence that faith without deeds is useless? Was not our father Abraham considered righteous for what he did when he offered his son Isaac on the altar? If you see that his faith and his actions were working together, his faith was made complete by what he did. And the scriptures were fulfilled that says, Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness, and he was called God's friend. You see that a person is considered righteous by what they do and not by the faith alone. In the same way, was not even Rahab, the prostitute, considered righteous for what she did when she gave lodging to the spies and sent them off in a different direction. As the body without spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead. So I've read that entire lesson, like part of the scriptures. One of the things we're getting ready to see is kind of like this very important question that is going to come up. And I'm going to ask us to go into like deep focus on this. When we read verse 14, one of the first things we're going to see is James asked the question, what good is it to profit for us to have said that we have faith, but then don't do anything to show for it? Pretty much said that we haven't worked for it. Then he asked this question, can faith save him? Meaning, can faith save us as brothers or sisters in Christ? Here's what we got to do is, when you read verse 14 and you see that question, can faith save him? We need to actually first ask this question and answer that question. What is faith? If you get the dictionary, version of faith, and I went to on the website and got the Webster, definition of faith. It reads just like this. It gives us several definitions. One definition says allegiance to duty or a person. A second definition says belief and trust in and loyalty to God. Another definition says belief in the traditional doctrine of a religion. Another one says a complete trust. And one of the last definitions that I got from the Webster Dictionary says something that is believed, especially with strong conviction. So usually when you hear someone says that they have faith, they say, I have faith in that person, meaning I have faith that, maybe my children's not going to kill someone. Then the one that kind of relates to what we're saying, that belief and trust and loyalty to God is, I believe in God. When it says belief in traditional doctrine of a religion is, I have faith in, the Baptist way of life, or, the Methodist way of life. To have complete trust is, I have faith that, our Congress is going to do the right thing when it comes to the next, whatever that they have, whatever that they are faced and presented with. And then it's like something that is believed, especially with strong conviction. It's like, I have faith that I can actually run this marathon, today. So that's ways that those definitions is, those examples of it. So when we see that when we got James asking that question, can faith save him? We got to look at what did Jesus say, and then we're going to see how that is actually answered. We see that when Jesus asked us the two commandments, and, we already know the two commandments. It was pretty much highlighted when you look at Matthew's, the 22nd chapter, 37 and 40. There's two. It's one of them is love God with all our heart, soul, and mind. And the second one is love our brothers as ourselves. We see that one of the, when we look at the Webster dictionary, is pretty much in a sense kind of answered. Believe and trust and have loyalty to God. So in that fact, we have like an answer. But when we look at that second part of it, we truly don't answer what is being asked right there. Because you don't, even though you may have some type of allegiance, or you may have some type of trust to a person in a sense, it's not on the same level as love, your brother as yourself, or love someone as you do yourself. So this is what I mean by that. And James give us a, example of this when we look at verses 15 through 16. When you actually see a brother or sister, just say, and I'm going to use homeless because that's pretty much the way that he was using it in his example. When you see like a brother or sister, if you see them on the side of the road, or if you see them, in need, it is our duty to sit there and help them to get better. One of the things that people say a lot of times, especially, Christians or whatever, they will actually say, we need to do something about these homeless people that we see out here, on the streets every day. We need to, do the things that will help them to get off the street, get a better way of life, help feed them, clothe them, and things like that. When James started to attack what they were saying, he was saying, you have the faith in them, meaning you believe and have an allegiance to their needs, but what are you doing to help them? Just like what the verse was saying, it's like if you said go in peace, be full and prosper basically, but then you don't do anything about it, then you just like someone in today's time saying, I want to, we need to help the homeless, but you don't have any actions to follow up and support what you believe and what you're trying to do. So basically what James is saying is like, if you said that, then your works is dead. What you speaking about, it don't have any meaning. So we can't be one of those people who is actually sitting there saying, I want to actually, help someone that's in need, and then don't do anything about it. One of the other things to, as I was studying this, and we always look at it on just the physical part of it, here's something that really should hit home for us as Christians. When we are thinking about this, we also got to think about the ones that is in sin and living in sin, and they are asking and searching for something to actually, help them out of the situation at the end. And a lot of time when we say in sin, we think of just something extreme or whatever. But you could be living in sin without just the extreme things that we always think about. If a person is not a child of God, then they're living in sin. So we know that there's someone out there that's a friend, a family member, or whatever, or there's someone that's, we kind of, beginning to get close to, and we know that they don't know God. What good is it for me to tell them how great God is, how much good that he's doing in my life, but then I don't never ask them to come to church with me? Or what good does it for me to tell them how great, God have brought me through all this stuff, and then whenever they need some type of help with just ordinary life, I'm too busy to be there for them? This is what, James is saying. What good is it, Edgar, if you telling somebody how great God is, but then when someone truly needs you, regardless if it's physical or spiritual, you're never there for them? So this is where we have to make sure that we're supplying everyone's need, regardless of what it is, mentally, physically, or spiritually, especially when we are children of God. Then we get to one of the things that have been like a classic to me, and I've always thought about this. It's like there's two of them, verses 18 and 19. When you read verse 18, it reads just like this. But someone would say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith without your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. Here's where you get a lot of times people that is maybe rich, or they are very active in their communities, and they can go into all the details of how they help out various, charities, or how they're helping, the needy or whatever. But then they, kind of like don't support God in what they're doing. Or, they may be someone that's an atheist, and yeah, they're giving away millions of dollars towards some type of charity. But when it comes to them actually believing in God, then they fall short on that, and, they don't believe in him. And it's like, I don't need God. I need, the material things that I have. What can God do? I don't see him helping these people out. That's kind of like the response these people would give. So then when we see what James is basically saying, here's where it's going to be, pretty much stressed to us. When a person said, you have faith and I have works, that's where they saying, you believing in your God, but I'm believing in my works. Here's where our response should be to that. When we sit there and we work, our works should be towards God. Everything that we do on this earth should be presented towards God so that he gets the glory. If anything I do, if the end result is he's not getting glory, then I don't need to be doing it. That's why you can't sin. God's not going to get any glory in sin. So it's like, that's why anything that I do, it's got to be the end result is God is going to get the glory. So now what that means is, if I'm working each and every day to make sure that what I do is going to give God glory, then it's not going to fail. It's going to always continue. Here's where that is different from a person who is doing all this work, and it may be great work, but it's not based on God. If a person, even if they have all the right intentions, is working hard, doing the right thing for people, but God is not the one that's going to get the glory in the end, they're going to soon pass away. I don't care how hard they work. I don't care how rich they may be. One day they're going to pass away. But if you got your efforts and your, mindset towards God, we know God's not going anywhere. So everything that we actually are doing, if we are basing it on God and giving him the glory, then what James is telling us is, if we base everything that we do on God, it's basically what we're going to do is we're going to take and show you our faith by my works. Meaning God's going, I'm going to be able to show you God is going to be the one who glorifies my works, instead of, I'm going to be working hard and stuff to actually be glorified. The way to say it again is, a person may have their works glorified, but we as Christians should have God glorify our works. God is going to always glorify our works if we're doing it by giving him the glory. And when we do that, then we're going to always be on the right end when it's all said and done. And whatever we're doing is going to continue to keep going and going, because he's the one who's getting the glory, not us. When we read verse 19, I've always thought it was funny, because James, as I said, numerous times, he's one of those people who just really tells it how it is. And when he says this, he said, "You believe that there is one God, you do well," meaning that's good. But what he also says is, even the demons believe and tremble. When James says this, he basically is putting all these people that I've heard my entire life on the spot. One of the first things that you hear about, when you speak to someone who is not like fully committed to walking with God, they'll tell you just like it is. I believe there's a God. I know that there's a God. And then they put that famous letter, but, and then you can add whatever else you want to it. But that's how they will always phrase it. So I don't care what the conversation is. If it gets real deep and it gets to what your true beliefs are, usually what a person will kind of put in there is, yeah, I believe there's God, and I believe he's real and this and that and other. But whenever they do that, this is what James is basically, he's putting like a stamp on there. It's like, yeah, it's good for you to believe in God, but he's also saying that the demons in hell, they believe that too. So what's the big deal? That don't mean anything that you have that faith that there is a God, because even the demons believe that and they tremble. So they know how real he is. They know better than we would on that fact. That's why we can't, just be stuck on believing that there is a God. We got to have some actions with our words. One of the things that we see when we get into verse 20 through 25, we see that now James is really putting them on the spot, talking about how foolish they are. And then he gives them an example of Abraham and Isaac and what their faith is, what Abraham faith was when he was getting ready to offer up Isaac. To kind of give that quick, reminder to us, remember, Abraham was actually in a spot where he didn't have anything to sacrifice, and God told him to sacrifice, Isaac, and he just went through the process of getting ready to sacrifice Isaac. And Isaac even asked him, he's like, Daddy, I don't see any lamb. And one of the things Abraham said, God will provide. When he did that and he got ready to go through the whole process and got ready to kill Isaac, he never stopped, but he knew somewhere in the process, God had an answer and had a reason for what he was doing. Abraham didn't know what the end result was going to be, but he knew as long as I kept my trust and my faith in God, then the end result is God is going to fix whatever it is that he has planned. This is why when we actually read about, in the 23rd verse, it says that Abraham believed God and it was accounted to him for righteousness, and he was called a friend of God. Abraham not only believed in God, God looked at his works as being righteous, meaning it was accredited. It was looked upon as being righteous. And the end result was God considered, Abraham his best friend, like his friend. What better place to be than to be a friend of God's? So here is where Abraham's works was actually being supported by his faith. That's what it means. It's like he could have told anybody, I know there had to be several times Abraham was telling Isaac that he needed to believe in God and how great God is and was to him. But when it came to that part right there, as he did his, went through the whole process to show his, the true actions of how much he believed in God, that's when he was able to have a testimony to show Isaac, see, son, I told you how great God was. Because when you didn't think there was a way to be have something provided for you to actually sacrifice to the Lord, see how he actually had this ram stuck in the bush so that we could properly give our thanks and our, glorification to him in the way that it should be. This is where our works is going to be accompanying our faith. He don't have to tell Isaac anymore. Isaac seen with his own eyes, and we see with our own eyes how great God is and how much he is when we actually put actions to our words when we say we believe that there is a true and living God. One of the other things that we see is when we kind of end this it starts to talk about Rahab and her belief in God. One of the things that Rahab did that was so important in the beginning, she would actually, hid the spies so that they could actually, not get killed as they was, looking at how the situation was, so that they could report back, if it was a good time to attack or not, in that situation. And because of her, even though in the world's point of view, she was nothing more than a prostitute, and she was supposed to be the lowest of lows, her faith that God was going to take and provide for her and her family, not only did she go from, in the eyes of the world, as being just a prostitute, she wound up being part of the genealogy of Jesus. So now whenever we talk about Rahab, she's not a prostitute. Whoever would have thought about her as being, like the lowest of lows back then, we don't even know who they are. They're not in the Bible. They're not recorded in the Bible. But God, not only did he make her part of the will, his will, he actually made it where she's part of the genealogy. She's part of the bloodline that leads all the way down to Jesus. See, when we have true faith, whatever our faith is, when it's got actions to our words and to our belief, then what happens, God will, put us into his will, and who knows what the end result's going to be. But we know that there's no better place to be than within God's will. We may be, sitting here and being looked down upon by a whole lot of people right now in the world. There's no telling what people may think of me right now. But if I continue to have my faith in God, and I continue to put my actions toward what the Lord wants me to do, 10, 20, or 30 years from now, my kids may be able to say to their kids and to their grandkids, this is what, your daddy was able to do because he believed in a true and living God. That's where our faith and our actions, our works, that go hand in hand. That's where it means, they were made perfect. When you read it, a lot of times, depending on what version of the Bible, it's like it was made perfect, meaning it was made complete, made whole. If you don't have actions with your faith, then it's broken. If you have just work with no faith, it's broken. You must have both of them together to truly have the true faith that we talk about when we're talking about, God and anything that we can do within his will, what is, Jesus' will, and anything that's pertaining to God's word. So that's why when we read verse 26, it ends it just like this to sum it up. Verse 26 says, "For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without work is dead also." And it just basically means if you can't connect both faith and your works together, then you wasting your time. Don't go out here telling people how great God is if you're not going to do anything to prove it. Sometimes the only Bible that a person see is us. So if I'm not walking in the same thing that I'm saying, then they ain't seeing nothing but a blank page. That's just the best way to put it. So I hope and pray that, we all got something out of this tonight. I truly hope that you're able to be with us on Sunday as we get ready to, listen to some of the new guest speakers that's going to come to our church as we continue our, walk towards finding a new, pastor for the church and stuff. And I pray that all of you is able to come out and hear the, gentleman speak. And we just want to continue to be in prayer for this because we want to make sure that God is the one who is leading us and guiding us through this process, and that he helps us as a church picks the next person who is going to take and lead us in the years to come. So I don't have anything else left to say. I just want to say thank you. And, till Sunday, if the Lord is willing, I'll see you then. Good night.